Welcome to the Thriving Children podcast, the show that helps parents and teachers to put the magic back in child development. Here's your host, Clare Crew.
This is episode number 78 of the Thriving Children podcast. I'm Clare Crew, and in this episode, I'm delving into part 3 of our Tummy Time series. So this episode is when we're going to get really practical, and I'm going to be sharing 11 ideas for injecting some fun into your daily tummy time practice. Now, what I will say though is that while I'm trying to make this as easy to digest as possible, some things are a whole lot easier to make sense of when you can actually see them rather than when you can just hear them. So I'm hoping that from my notes, it's going to make sense what I'm describing to you. But please keep in mind that I'm actually going to be sharing some images of each of these 11 ideas in the coming couple of weeks in the Thriving Children Facebook community. So if you feel like you need to actually see them to make proper sense of this, then that's where you need to head. And I think that that might be quite advantageous as well, because it means that it's going to keep being fresh in your mind over the next couple of weeks when you see that in your Facebook feed, as opposed to just listening to the podcast, thinking that you're going to implement lots and maybe kind of petering out after a few days. So if you do want to join the Thriving Children Facebook community, you can simply search for it in Facebook, but I'll also put a link to it in the show notes. All right, let's delve into these 11 ideas. So the first one I'm going to call Tummy Rock, and this is a really simple one that I've touched on in previous podcasts as well. So this is perfect for those teeny tiny babies or a baby that perhaps needs tummy time but who's quite resistant to it. What you're going to do is simply lay down on your back on the ground. It could be outside on the grass, it could be inside, it doesn't really matter. And you're going to place your baby onto your tummy. So you can have a cuddle. If they look up, as they lift up their head, you can gaze into each other's eyes. And if you want to add in a little bit more movement, you can simply just rock your body gently from side to side while keeping your baby close. So that's a really easy intro to tummy time, really soothing for baby, but you are still getting them in that position. So idea number 2, I'm calling tummy hold. So this is another really easy everyday way to maximize how much tummy time a baby is getting. And essentially what you're doing is when you carry your baby, when you hold your baby, you're doing the tummy hold. This one I'm hoping that you already know how it looks because it's just so hard to put into words. But essentially what you're doing is your baby's head is resting outwards in the crook of your bent arm. So your hand is supporting their tummy or their groin. So kind of picture that you've got your arm out in front of you. Your baby's head is where your elbow is, and then your hand is there to support the lower part of their body. And some people in that position feel quite secure, and it also, I guess, depends on how wriggly and how big your baby is too. You might feel quite secure just with having them on your arm and your other hand is free to do things. But if you're still developing confidence or you're worried that your baby isn't as secure in that hold, you could put your other hand on your baby's back. So idea number 3 is what I'm calling tummy time togetherness. So this is where you're laying opposite your baby on the floor. So your baby's on their tummy, you're on your tummy, and as they lift up their head or their head and their chest, you're looking into each other's eyes. So you might sing a song, you might talk to her gently, you might be responding to her babble. And not only will your baby be content on their tummy for a longer period of time, but they are also more likely to be doing that head lift because they want to see you. They want to to work out where the sound of your voice is coming from. Obviously, if it's with a friend that comes over, they might be more curious about that new voice. If it's you, that's a sound that they know inside and out already, but they still want to work out where the source of it is coming from. So this is a really lovely position in which you can build that trust and connection. It can also be done with another baby. And I shared that idea, I think last week, when I was talking about tummy time in a baby room when you've got quite a lot of babies and you need to make it as easy for yourself as possible. And it could also work in front of a mirror. But I do think that for a baby, especially in the early days of tummy time, having a loved caregiver across from them is going to be much more effective. Idea number 4 for tummy time is a ride on a blanket. So if you'll need a fairly firm surface for this. It's not going to work outside. Probably the best surface as well is something like tiles or floorboards. It works on carpet, but depending on how heavy your baby is, it's going to be a little bit trickier for you, not for your baby. So put a blanket down on the ground on a firm surface. If you are a teacher who's done a workshop with me and you've got a spare bit of lycra lying around or a parachute, this works equally as well. Put your baby in the middle of the blanket or whatever it is that you're putting them on, and then you hold the two corners, the two edges at the front, and then you are essentially just walking backwards, pulling your baby along on the blanket or the lycra or the parachute. And obviously, as a new experience, you're going to go quite slowly for a few times to kind of build up that confidence for them, that predictability of how it feels and that it is safe, that it is okay. And obviously for a newer, younger baby, you would keep it quite slow for a longer period of time too. But if we're talking about an older baby, that's when you can build up some speed, and over time you'll probably get some lovely giggles and things too. So yeah, really simple, just putting baby on their tummy, on a blanket or something like a blanket and pulling them around. Idea number 5 is let's get the ball rolling. So if you've got a fit ball, a gym ball, or it even does work, maybe not as well on a large beach ball, then you can place your baby onto their tummy on the fit ball and hold them securely at the hip. So you've kind of got your hands cupped around their hips so that you're not just putting a hand on top, but you've actually got a hold of them as they balance on the ball. And then you're rolling the ball. So normally when I do this, I would be positioned behind the baby with hands cupped at hips and then rolling the ball gently forwards and backwards. So it's a very slight movement initially, but again, as your baby's strength and sense of adventure increases, then you can make that rolling motion way more pronounced. And in fact, children who are toddlers, preschoolers, even school-age children really love this. Obviously, if they're school-age, they can do it themselves, and it's probably more comfortable on grass or something, where essentially as they go forwards, they put their hands out and then they push themselves back. So they're kind of going to and fro, pushing off their hands and then their feet. So we're doing the work for them when it's a baby, but it's a similar experience. Now, if your baby is feeling quite tentative, I would recommend that another adult is on the other side of the ball. They're essentially doing a bit of a peekaboo as the baby goes over and sees them. Or you might, as you've experimented with it a few times, you might then feel quite comfortable, which I can now do with doing it the same hold, cupped around the hips, but actually bringing the baby towards you. So you can sort of do a game of peekaboo. You can even, as babies get older, put one of their favorite toys or objects on the ground, and actually by that point in time, you're rolling the ball over a lot more, and they can actually reach down and grab that toy as they come back up. And it might take a few goes, but again, that's part of the adventure and the game. And then the focus isn't just on the tummy time. There's this other interaction. There's this other experience going on at the same time. Idea number 6 is flying legs. And this is one that my kids still ask for now. And I have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 9-year-old. It is a hardcore workout with my 8 and 9-year-old. Still pretty easy with my 5-year-old. But that goes to show how much they love this when they were babies, that they still want to do it now. So essentially what you do as the adult is you lay on your back with your legs bent and your feet off the ground. And then you're going to at your feet on the ground to start with. So I call them mountain legs. So you're laying on your back, your legs have that bend, feet on the ground. Then you place your baby up against your legs, sort of on your shins, and you hold them again with those cupped hands, but this time underneath the arms. So you're holding them in that kind of arm and top of the chest region. And then when you know you've got that secure hold, you're going to gently raise your legs until they're horizontal to the ground and you can see your baby's face. So from there, you can move your legs in and out so that they get closer to you and then further away from you, and then closer to you again and then further away from you. So you can make it a bit of a peekaboo game again, like with the last idea. But you can also go side to side. Now that takes a bit more practice. That takes a bit more strength. So don't feel that you need to do that in the early days. It is something that I can't really do side to side now with my 8 and 9-year-old now that they're a lot heavier, because then they fly off, which is kind of part of the fun too, but I don't want to advocate that with, an older, slightly heavier baby. We definitely don't want them to go flying off. Now, when it's time for the ride to finish, and that might be because your baby's had enough, that might be because your legs are tired, you can straighten your legs, and then you help them to have that sliding motion down your legs and onto your tummy for a lovely little rock and cuddle and squish. Now, I used to do this, and I still do it, with a song from play school that you might know, and I don't actually know what it is called. We call it the Zoom Zoom song, and it goes, up in the air I fly, zoom, zoom, a zoom, 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 up in the clear blue sky, zoom, zoom, a zoom, 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 zoom. There you go. I never thought I would sing on the podcast. You have to excuse me. My voice isn't an amazing voice, but the point is it doesn't matter. Children do not care what your voice sounds like. If you are an important person to them, your voice is amazing. So please don't hold off on the singing. So essentially what I would do in that song is the first half of the song, we'd be going the in and the out. And then the zoom, zoom, zoom bit, we'd end up doing the rocking side to side. And then as the song finished, they'd kind of, collapse down on me and then flop onto the floor next to me. So that's one that I think can be really joyful and really, really fun. But again, they're still getting that tummy time. Idea number 7, I'm calling Laptastic, and this is pretty simple. This is just that while you're sitting down, you might be having a conversation with a friend, you might even be watching TV or reading a book, or watching an older child at the park. You essentially just lay your baby across your legs, and in the early days, definitely you're going to need to support your baby's head in this position. So what I used to do was essentially just make a bit of a C shape with my thumb and my finger and hold underneath my child's jaw. So sometimes they might actually be okay without, depending on how big your lap is and how big the baby is, that may not be necessary, but you do want to provide that support for their head if they don't actually have space on your legs for it. And of course, you've got to be careful too that your child can breathe and that they're not face down on your legs. So obviously be mindful of all of those things, but that's a really good position to birth babies in, but it is actually another tummy time position. And if they tire of being up, on your chest or being on the floor by themselves, then that is a position that feels a little bit different. It can feel really comfortable for their tummies. And again, I guess a different vantage point from which to see the world too. Idea number 8 is about bath time. So very often with bath time, most babies, not all, most babies love bath time or really any opportunity to be in the water. But we seem to always put them in a position where our babies can look up at us. So they're on their backs. And that's definitely the easiest position for washing, for giving that reassuring eye contact. And definitely in the early days when you're really trying to come to grips quite literally with that slippery, wet baby, that's definitely the best position. But as you get a bit more confident and after, for example, you've actually done the washing component of that bath time, you can then shift to a tummy time hold. This is a really hard one to describe, so I think the picture sums it up best. But essentially, I would have, I'm just kind of replicating the position now. I would kind of have their head in the middle of my forearm, and I would have my hand kind of hooked around underneath one of their arms. So essentially I had a hold of them at the shoulder and their head was supported by my arm, because obviously we've got to be very careful in this position that they do have oxygen, that their face isn't underwater. So if in doubt, perhaps don't do this one, but a quick look at the images and you'll very easily see that it is a safe position when done right. And so what this means is that your baby is experiencing the feel of the water underneath their tummy. It feels different when you kick in this position. And also then they're doing that sort of head lifting and looking around as well. And this, for me, my children loved bath time, and this was just a lovely little extra way to get in a bit more tummy time. Idea number 9 is massage. So when a baby's laying on their tummy, you're able to massage their whole back, their hands, their arms, their shoulders, their neck, their head, their legs, their feet. You can access all these different parts of their body. And that touch is really important for building that body awareness, that understanding of what parts of their body they have, where they're located, and how it feels to move them. So massage for babies can obviously be done skin to skin. And if you're doing it skin to skin, I definitely recommend using an oil so that, it's more lubricated touch. It's not feeling too uncomfortable. It feels nice and slippery instead. And, you don't need the official commercial baby oils. In fact, the ingredients in some of those are horrific. I would just recommend using an edible oil such as olive oil or avocado oil. I sometimes use nut-based oils with older children or with myself as a moisturizer. I typically just use oil and some essential oils mixed in. But I would definitely probably avoid the nut oils for younger children in case there's some nut allergies that you're not yet aware of. But olive oil, avocado oil, just as is, or if you feel that they're ready for some essential oils and you know that is fine, just follow the recommendations that are out there. I know normally with children, the amount of essential oils that you put in the bath or you put in a moisturizer is half what you would for an adult. I'm not sure if the recommendations are different for a baby, so I definitely urge you to have a look into that. Now when I do massage with my children, often it will just be their feet after an Epsom sort of bath salt session. We do use essential oils, but back when they were babies, I didn't at that point in time. So it can, as I just said, be skin to skin with the oils, but it can also be on clothing as well. So don't feel like this has to be a once a week big palaver kind of thing. It can just be, hey, they're on their tummy. I'm just going to introduce some touch now on top of their clothing. Massage is really good for babies. As I said, it's great for body awareness. It can improve sleep, weight gain, digestion, circulation, and apparently it even might ease teething pain. And I'm not quite sure what the connection is there. I don't know if it's, giving the child different, more comforting sensations to focus on, or if it reduces the inflammation. I've got no idea. But it's also great for bonding, and it can be something that's really pleasant and calming for us to do with our babies as well. I know that particularly when I had my first child and I had more time to devote to things like massage, it she was quite an unsettled baby. So to be able to do a full body massage for her and see her delight in that, it was actually a really lovely experience for both of us. Now, I was lucky enough to do a free baby massage course when she was quite young, but you can, that is an avenue you can definitely go down, and they do paid courses, but you can also find some basic massage strokes just online, and it's really not that hard. So even if you kind of look at some massage strokes online and go, oh my goodness, this milking thing, what am I meant to do there? Maybe a friend knows and can show you. Or maybe you could just literally do some little karate chops, some chops sort of all over their body, their back, their legs, their bottom, their arms, their feet. You can do some nice kind of tickly circle touch, and you can just do some strokes that go in that downwards motion. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be correct in a specific, massage industry way. It's just about touch. And this is something that our children need to continue with them right through childhood. It's not something that's just unique to babies, but it is something that is even more important for babies and much easier for us to deliver to them, especially before they're mobile babies as well. Idea number 10 is blanket swings. So what you do here, you do need 2 grown-ups. So this isn't going to be ideal as an everyday thing. If you are the only person at home with a baby, it could definitely work in a baby room. If it's in a moment where everyone is fairly settled and they could each have a turn, but it is definitely something that you can do when friends come over or a partner comes home or on the weekend where there's more adults around. So it's quite simple again. What you do is put your baby in the middle of a blanket, tummy side down. You're going to hold 2 corners. So you might hold the corners on the left of baby, and the other adult holds the 2 corners on the right of baby. And then you're going to lift up the blanket. So do make sure it's a sturdy one. And you're just going to swing it gently backwards and forwards. So you're swinging left to right, but it's backwards and forwards for baby. And again, in the early days, you might need to be talking to baby to reassure them, really make it gentle. It's going to feel like almost nothing for you as far as how much you're swinging for it to still be quite a significant movement for them perhaps. You may in the early days even want to have a third person, like maybe a younger brother or sister or, a cousin or another adult, just providing that reassuring eye contact as they come closer and then move further away. But as babies get more and more used to this, and as they get older, as they get more strong, lifting up their head to see what's going on, they can get really adventurous and really want that big swinging motion backwards and forwards. And again, it's quite, it's an experience that creates a lot of delight and a lot of giggles. It's definitely one of my favorites. And idea number 11, the last that I'm sharing here, I guess is more than one idea sandwiched in. So the other things that I shared were different positions or almost game-like type experiences that you can do with tummy time. But my ideas here for this number 11 is really just the fact that laying on your tummy can be really hard work for babies, as we've talked about in the previous 2 episodes in this series. And it can be a really lonely experience in the way that we often offer it. We just kind of plonk our baby down on the ground and off we go. And if you're particularly not yet at an age where you can even reach and grasp when you're on your tummy, it's not going to be a position you're going to be happy in for very long. So it's really lovely, it's much more positive if we can give our baby something to see or hear or feel while they're on their tummy. It makes it a much richer experience, and it means that tummy time then is not the focus. The focus is these other experiences, and they just happen to be on their tummy. So a menu of floor time ideas is really good to have in the back of your mind. Some things that work really well are blowing bubbles. You don't need a fancy bubble machine. If you've got one, that's fine. They work well, but you can just get from a supermarket or a cheap shop some of the old school bubbles that you would remember, where you bring out the wand and blow, and baby can look at those bubbles floating around in the air. And sometimes, one might even land on their hand and then pop. You can sing songs, play an instrument if you're so inclined. You can read a book laying next to your baby with the book positioned right in front of you. You know, there's nothing to say that you always have to have a child sitting on your lap to read a book. And in fact, actually on Facebook quite recently, I shared a video of my 5-year-old when she was probably about 6 months old, and we were laying on our backs and I was reading a story, and the vocalizations that she had on each page, it was just such a beautiful video to rediscover. And, you know, ideally, that would be great on tummy as well, which we did do. But interestingly, she never did the vocalizations when on her tummy. She only did it on her back. But still, you know, it doesn't always have to be a baby prop to sit on our lap to read a book. There are other positions and ways of doing it. So you can get out into nature. You can set up a little rug or just go directly on that pile of leaves or that bit of grass where there are new sights, sounds, smells and tastes. And nature is very nurturing. It's something that our body craves the sights and the sounds of. So sometimes if you're having one of those hairy days, just moving into that space that you have near you, hopefully in your backyard, even if it's not a nature style backyard, even if there's lots of pavers and things, you've still got the fresh air, you've still got the sunshine or the cloud or the bird noises. And those little changes can make the experience brand new again. As I said earlier, you can put your baby in front of a mirror so they're going to be memorized by their reflection. And another idea is that you could roll a small ball from left to right near your baby. So they're actually then turning their head and tracking with their eyes. Definitely don't make it too intense. You don't want them to look like you're playing a game of tennis, but it just creates that interest. And obviously be talking about what you're doing as well and what your baby actually sees. So you're starting to create that connection between what they see and some language to explain it. As your baby gets older with this one, they're actually likely to maybe even actually, stop that ball and grab it. But, when they are at that point where they can use their arms well while they're on their tummy, it might even be something that you could roll towards them. And they'll probably it might stop on their arms and then they might eat it for a while and then it might sort of roll back to you quite naturally. I'm sure that there are more ideas than that, but those are the ones that I can think of at this point in time that I've done with my babies and with other babies that have gone down really, really well. But really, I just want to get you thinking outside the box. There are so many different things that we can do when a baby is having tummy time, which makes it fun, which makes it interactive, and I think which really removes the drudgery from you. Because if you can see that your baby is enjoying things while in this position, it's no longer this kind of heavy sensation that, I should be doing it more, but it's so hard and my baby doesn't like it and I feel horrible even just thinking about the fact that we have to do it. Tummy time can be fun. Now, for older children who may not have had much tummy time, you likewise can lay in the position that I just described on the tummy to do things like reading books, to do work in the classroom. Who said that children have to sit at a desk all day long? It might even be that if they're outside watching their friends play or, bird watching or whatever, they might like to do it on their tummy. And doing so can be incredibly helpful to fill in some of those gaps from missed tummy time when they were a baby. But it's still going to be a position that is going to be very tiring for children if they haven't yet really mastered that head control, even if they're 6 or 8 or whatever age they might be. So my best recommendation here is to get back to basics with a primitive reflex integration program to fill in any of those gaps that might be present. And what I'll do is I'll put a couple of links in the show notes to some recent blog posts that I've written that outline what options are out there for working on reflex integration later in life, and also how long to anticipate that this process may take. Is it going to be something that takes a week or a month or a year? It's really good to have all the information, I think, before you actually pursue this avenue and start to put things in motion. So really, in a nutshell, it's never too late to revisit that first year of life. So if your baby didn't have much tummy time, you can do things to help get them on track now. But obviously, the best approach is to make sure that our babies have enough time in this position while they're still a baby. So we don't need to catch them up. This is the perfect time to make sure that they're being set up for success. And I guess success in ways that we sometimes can't easily point to. But which I think listening back to that first part of the Tummy Time mini-series will really help to give you more of a concrete idea of the work that is happening when a baby's in that position. So this has been the last episode in my Tummy Time 3-part series. I really hope that they've each brought to your attention new information about the importance of tummy time, how to weave it into your life. So just a little reminder there that we need short but frequent bursts each day. And also, specifically in this episode, some really practical ideas to bring in some fun and some variety for tummy time practice. So a reminder again that if you want to see some images for each of those ideas that I have shared in this episode, you can see them in the Thriving Children Facebook community. I'll probably put one up every day or so after this episode goes live, so they won't all be there at one moment in time, but they'll be filtering through in the coming couple of weeks. And lastly, before I go, I just wanted to remind you that this is the last opportunity to join the Thriving Children Book Club for this year. This episode, at the time that it goes live, there'll be another 2 or 3 days, I think 2 days, to join the community for term 4, where we're reading 2 new books about child development, and you're coming along on the journey with me. So likewise, I will put a link to that in the show notes if you want to learn any more, or if you want to come on board and join us. So that's now officially the end of this episode. Until next time, be kind to yourself.
Thanks for listening to the Thriving Children podcast. For even more goodness, visit thrivingchildren.com.au.